Europe, we now try to correlate our cycles of planning, and at this moment, Ministry of Regional Development, Ministry of Economic Development and Trade, they started this work, but on the national level. After creation national frame, regional strategies should be worked in all regions of Ukraine. And I'm more than sure that civil society in regions did not hear even about smart specialization approach. But next 7 years we will live in Ukraine with strategic documents which will be created without civic participation, only because of lack of capacity. Even on level state institutions, not only in civic society. And one more example from this document, Target 2020, at least 3 partner countries upgraded or adopted their public administration reform strategies in line with the principles of public administrations. Really, in Ukraine, we rather successful adopt PAR, and many ministries have now RST, Reform Support Teams. And members of civil society organization work in this RST. And maybe you know, we now establish in ministries new directorates. It is called like in the European Commission. Instead of departments, we have in some ministries already directorates. And members of RST become civil servants, in fact. So civil society lose these people because they change their positions and start to work on civil servants, civil service. So we also should understand how to attract new activists in civil society sector in Ukraine, because now we have enough opportunities. We have really great support from European Union, but it's a question of physical realization of these opportunities. But at the same time, we have one more challenge when we say about intersectoral, inter-society cooperation. It is specified in the title of our session. In this case, there are no so much opportunities to realize common initiatives with even with Georgian and Moldovan colleagues. We have modest resources of civil society forum through regranting scheme. We have Visegrad Foundation programs which can support projects for countries of EAP. And maybe that's all. I'm not sure that I can call more donors who support inter-society cooperation. By the way, Civic Synergy is one of such projects, so they can support only limited involvement of experts from other countries than Ukraine. And it's obviously because the main task of this project to support platforms in Ukraine. But it's also one more question for discussion: how to activate inter-society cooperation in the current situation with such strict resources.
Thank you, Yuri, for throwing in so many important discussion issues. Indeed, what you referred to is the lack of capacity of civil society to digest much more demanding reform agenda than it used to be several years ago. And it's clearly seen that there is bigger demand of a bigger type of services expected from civil society. It's not only advocating for a general European choice as it used to be, it's more technical expertise needed, very deep knowledge of different sectoral issues. And sometimes we see that the government is willing to listen to civil society, but what it wants to hear is often not what civil society is ready to say. So more specific assistance is expected. It's like having another kind of donor assistance or cooperation assistance, more technical expertise. So sometimes the government wants us to write draft legislation or produce very specific analysis, which is typically provided by technical assistance projects. And that's not what civil society is ready to provide, at least by far not in all spheres of association agreement. But we'll come back to that later, and I really wanted us to start with a short introduction of where the platforms are and who the platforms are. I hope you are not by now very much confused about the constellation of the Ukrainian pro-European civil society. I think that in the Georgian case, and we now turn to Georgia, the two platforms are more tied to each other by its origin, right? So I don't know who wants to start, either Kaha Gogolashvili or Lasha Tugushi, the respective coordinators of the two Georgian platforms. But it is really interesting, how do you configure your platforms? How do they correlate with each other? How do you share spheres of competence or responsibility? Thank you. You can, I think that Lasha offers you the first floor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. You're absolutely right that in our case, we went through this process, through discussions about the nature of the latest platform, this EU-Georgia civil society platform. We had really serious discussions inside of civil society how to organize it. And there were, of course, ideas, and some representatives of civil society supported the idea to create a strong, independent EU bilateral platform, similar to Ukrainian one. In our case, finally, we decided that it would hinder the work, unity, and also work, and maybe also the image of the already existed national platform. Actually, starting explaining from the beginning, we know that in 2011, after in 2009, Civil Society Forum was established, gathering every year for an annual assembly, representatives of civil society, representatives of all 6 countries and European Union. In 2010, somewhere, or 11, people or civil society representatives represented in this forum, they decided, especially steering committee decided first of all, and they started organizing national platforms to support civil society forum, permanently working national platforms. We established also in 2011 this platform. Now it consists of, and Lasha is representing this platform. He's chairman of the first group at this, but he was twice chairman of the platform also, national platform. And this is 180 organizations force platform. For Georgia is a lot, actually. It's not 260 like in your case, but 180 for Georgia is quite a big number. And the other thing is that we organize this platform according to civil society forum structure, according to Eastern Partnership multilateral structure, so having 4 working groups. Initially, now we still have, I think we have 5th group also now, but it was decided because Civil Society Forum introduced for some time the 5th group too. So, and the main thing is that when association agreement was signed and we read it, we saw that national platform was a counterpart of from European side of Economic and Social Committee. A national platform was given already legitimacy and power by the association agreement to form the bilateral platform. It's already something. Now, when we were discussing the decision how the bilateral platform will or would operate, we based on this, that as far as national platform is already legitimized to have a say in this business, so to select the participants. So these participants come out of national platform. And now to create the separate body which will not absolutely depend, and there will be always problems of coordination because of this, we know. Finally, we decided that more important would be to conserve these powers of the national platform, not to hinder it, and establish a strong coordination between these two bodies and interchange. Finally, I see that Ukrainian bilateral platform has its own working groups, its own diplomacy, its own advocacy, and dealing with the government, etc. But we do the same through the national platform. As far as all members practically, we also select some few people, having 18 representatives from Georgian side, from European 9 in the bilateral platform. Still, the majority, 15, always are representing the national platform. And they have a full opportunity to discuss these things inside of working groups of the national platform. Also, the Georgian national platform has, Lasha will talk about it more precisely, has lots of channels of communication established and formal official channels, obligatory, with obligatory meetings and events already set up. It has already well-established channels with the government, with parliament, etc. And practically these people represented in the bilateral platforms, they are using this. So I just want to say that we have, in this regards, more integrated approach for both platforms. And I don't think that it is bad in our case, at least. I would like to say that still we have these people who are represented, these NGOs who are represented, or experts who are represented in the bilateral platform. We, of course, are dependent in our decision making. Independent from national platform too. So actually we consult national platform, the working groups, but finally the decisions are made individually by members of the bilateral platform, and we make the declarations and develop reports, etc. independently. So we have this freedom. We don't depend in this regards from the national platform. And also important things that we still have this group of people, 18 people represented in this bilateral platform, still have some communication meetings, not always through national platform. For example, we just months ago met chairman of the committee for European integration, Mrs. Hulordava, who is represented now here. It was very fruitful meeting, I think. Carefully discussing the declaration which we adopted together with, here is my counterpart from the European side, from Economic and Social Policy. Could you just present yourself? Co-chair.
Please join us.
Yes, counterpart or co-chair. Actually, I was expecting that you would join us and talk. It would be good.
No, seriously, there is one more place left. It's meant for you.
Yes. Yes, what is just maybe important to say that to my view, and for the moment we consider like this as the main purpose of this representation of this bilateral platform is to communicate voice of civil society and to negotiate also from the other side, from European civil society organizations, common approaches towards a common view, common analysis, to make common analysis and to agree on certain communication messages to the governments. What we do, we had only 3 meetings up to now. Ukrainian started earlier. We had 3 meetings. Now we are preparing for 4th meeting, and we also developed 2 reports during each meetings. These are parallel reports. So European side prepares report, and Georgian side. We already did reports on labor rights. We did report on media freedom. We also did and considered and debated reports on food safety, on small and medium business development, and we are going to make future reports on energy and deciding about one more topic. And of course, the main thing is joint declaration, which we do twice a year. We communicate together to the government. It's very good possibility to lobby decisions. And this is useful for the national platform also, because this is a possibility for them also to communicate through us to the government, the joint declaration where European civil society supports, especially for us it's important, supports Georgian civil society in certain messages. This is what we do basically. I'm ready for questions, answers, and now Lasha will please.
Could you please continue with expanding our knowledge what the mother platform is doing? It should be.
I prefer if we are fathers, not mothers.
It's to balance our gender disbalance.
Sorry, but for frank answer. And when our colleagues ask us question, what is it important or main achievement for us, I think for Georgian National Platform, I think it's open channels for structural dialogue with the governmental entities, because we have to be active, and we really need to have structural dialogue. And I can say we managed to channel structural dialogue with the executive as well as the legislative branches, gained reliable reputation, has more opportunities for further fruitful cooperation and light fertile foundation for a successful collaboration. Authorities, especially representatives of the line ministries, as well as the parliament, considers Georgian National Platform as an important actor and face a civil society sector. Georgian National Platform has the signed memorandums of cooperation. I think it's very important leverage to us with the government of Georgia, with the European Integration Committee of the Parliament of Georgia, and the signed memorandum with the regional, I'd like to emphasize this, regional branches in the many municipalities. And we also are very active in that direction. To evaluate the platform activities with different branches of government, we need the several criteria. First is legal basis, normative grounds. Second is bilateral desire to dialogue, to have a trust, to talk each other. I think it's very important. And the third is platform's possibility to respond to acute issues, be the initiator. It's also very important, but it's dialogue. For dialogue is not enough to be on top, and we need to have some smell or knowledge to catch momentum. It's I'd like to emphasize also. Memorandums of cooperation signed with the government of Georgia in 2015. The importance of the memorandum of cooperation, the work the platform is doing, and noted the minister and line ministries ready for closer cooperation with the Georgian national platform. The platform is an important and strong voice in Georgia EU integration effort. Existing cooperation must be depend and become even more intensive via sectorial meetings, both with the coordination council and with working groups. It's entities under the ministries, and sometimes we took it together, create kind of mechanisms. Our cooperation with the executive authorities expressed in the following direction: sectorial dialogue, mandatory procedure for reviving platforms initiatives. It's very important because we generated ideas and policy documents, briefs, and etc. Channel and high-level conference. It's also very important because it's accumulated what we are, where we are, what are we doing for a year, and I think it's good tradition. And our fourth is our participation on drafting different documents I just talking about. Memorandums of cooperation signed with the European Integration Committee of the Parliament of Georgia 2016. The experience of cooperation between the EU Integration Committee and the Georgian National Platform is perceived as a need and necessity. The memorandum, which was signed between the two parties, and the activities that fall under the scope of the committee, hopefully will become more effective. The platform's work on recommendations on legislative amendments. Last year, 9 recommendations were submitted by the Georgian National Platform member organizations, and most of them have been fully or at least partially taken into consideration. I think it's very, very important to improvement of the democratic institutions in our country. Our cooperation with the European Integration Committee of the Parliament of Georgia is expressed in the following direction: sending the draft laws to be discussed, sharing the views of the platform member organizations and the Parliament feedback, participations in the discussions of the law of the committee. Also, it's very important. The platform member organizations have the right to initiate draft laws. There are 2 great meetings in the Parliament which will deal with strategic issues. In 2016, GMP regional representations established in 4 regions in Georgia. Responsible persons, namely regional representatives from each GMP branches, implement activities such as strengthening GMP activities and its popularization in the regional context through regional information meetings, public lectures, and etc. and presentations. In order to strengthen regional representations, 5 memorandums of cooperation signed with the 3 municipalities. Representation signed MOCs with local self-governments. It's a different issue. It's not with the municipalities. It's happened just now also. Implementation of activity was of utmost importance as it turned to be a successful and powerful tool for increasing the GOG's accountability to the society. Our cooperation with the regional branches government is expressed in the following direction: take the part of solving existing problems at the local level, policy engaging in the local level, and budget issue. This is most important, I think. The part implies that we will take part in the process of elaboration and implementation of the budget. For effective work in the direction, we need capacity building. Of course, it's a quite problematic issue because in region we have people, but they are not so knowledgeable, and we need some sources, produce more qualified deliverables. The memorandums is a solid guarantee of cooperation which already exists and brings good results and should be strengthened and deepened in the future. Of course, we have challenges and barriers of this track. The government's willingness to conduct an intensive dialogue with us is really appreciated, but it's not secret. Governments in the new democracies are prone to act as a facet democracy. That's why it's so important for this cooperation to be always in the front line and be always up on the watch. Argus side, you know, Argus, it's very interesting guy with many ISIS. We should not lose the power which is in our hands. We must remember that achievements and conditions in new democracy are not sustainable and are fragile. If you don't permanently follow up and become more active, then all this will be lost. Platform member organizations have their opinions and attitudes about important and topical issues and initiatives on these sensitive areas such as environment, labor, safety. We have a very strong group that works on gender issues also, and just final remarks.
Yes.
Last, our initiative is, it's important that the member organizations always have their views, just talking about. We have developed a legislative initiative regarding changes for the independence of the prosecutor office. It's very sharp discussions now happened in our country regarding prosecutor office. We have offered in our initiative to change prosecutor of election of the prosecutor general. Also, our legislative proposal consider full depolitization of the prosecutor office, changing the rule of elections of members of the prosecutorial council, as well as changing the number of members of prosecutors with the council. Also, parliamentary hearings have been held on the draft law and discussions are still ongoing.
Okay.
This is
thank
important.
you, Lasha. Let me
thank
stop.
you very much. Yeah,
Let me stop you here because we really want to hear general picture.
I finished. Yeah,
yes, thank you very much. I see that I just an explanation that why is the difference between Georgian way and Ukrainian way, because the Ukrainian association agreement the text was ready earlier than the Georgian one, and by the time there was no Ukrainian national platform. That's why in your text it's already the Georgian national platform, which is designated as the body that has the responsibility to form the bilateral platforms. That's why you have. I don't know, you don't like the word mother, but a parent and a child in your case. And in our case, we have two separate identities. And now the European Union says, why don't you have a marriage? Because we would like to have more synergy between you. And it's not always easy to find a good relationship between two different people if they are not have no blood relationship, as in your case. But it's a very interesting approach, having many memorandums. I hope there is also substance to it, not only formal relationship, because it sounds quite challenging if you want to work on the national level, on the regional level, and even on the that's really challenging. I hope you are able to cope with it, because we often have this issue in Ukraine that NGOs, civil society platform members demand more recognition from the government, more promises to take civil society proposals into account, but when it comes to providing advice or opinions, it's not always the expertise is not always available, so it's not always easy to follow on those statuses in short. So we can first have a formal relationship, but what's more important is to have input both on the side of civil society. But let me turn now to Moldova. We don't have a co-chair or the national coordinator, but Denis Chinusha, as I know you are a long-term member of both types of platforms. So if you could briefly describe what those entities are, what's the difference between them, if they anyhow correlate, that would be really useful.
Thank you very much. It was very interesting to listen, to learn about the experience of Georgian and Ukrainian colleagues. I should say that in case of Moldova, things are a little bit different and not that positive. First of all, we should obviously distinguish between those platforms which are created under the multilateral, let's say, idea, and this is the national platform of Eastern Partnership Forum. This specific platform is very visible in case of Moldova. In the last year, after we had elected a new president, we had a lot of statements from the national platform regarding the political situation. I think that this is, by the way, in my view as observer, I am part of this. Well, I will later speak about myself. So, as observer of the and consumer of the news coming from the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, I have noticed that Moldovan National Platform is one of the most active. It is one of the most vocal. I think that in the last few months it published more than any other platform. It's a good sign. Of course, sometimes we should look at the substance and not the frequency or volume. But I believe that it was the right moment to speak out and to express the real concerns regarding what is going on in Moldova. And it was amid the decisions of courts to invalidate the elections, and then it was regarding in general the political situation. So I think that Moldovan National Platform, which belongs to this multilateral, let's say, idea, is working well. Where I see some troubles is in those platforms which are created under association agreement. Here I should mention that we have sometimes NGOs which are belonging to all three. I mean, all three, the first one that I already described, which is belonging to Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum. Then they belong to Civil Society Platform, which is as one of the provisions of association agreement, and DAG, which is the Development Advisory Group.
Yes, for
exactly.
Sustainable development.
Exactly. So we have NGOs which are in all three of them. Sometimes it creates this sense or this feeling of overlapping, and more than that, it also shows that too much ramification is not in favor of communication from these NGOs. Unfortunately, both in case of DAG and in case of Civil Society Platform, there is a lot of communication when some meetings should happen. So it is not a systemical communication, and there is no real, let's say, institutional mechanism which will unite these two platforms. Also, they are not united to the first one that I already described, which is somehow creating this fragmented attempts of civil society to contribute to the decision-making process. And this actually creates this confusion about in general, what, who, why so many. Here I think that we should really work out an idea to at least to make those platforms which are part of association agreement and DCFTA to be officially represented in the Eastern Partnership Civil Society National Platform. it will make more sense, it will make more cohesion, it will create conversion, which will obviously contribute to the general idea of civil society being an active actor, which is clearly noticeable. You have no confusion, because it also will help in our communication to the public and in our, let's say, peer-to-peer communication that we try to have with officials. This is like general idea of how things are going on. Maybe I could add also on lack of financial assistance for the Secretariat of the Civil Society Platform and DAG, which are crucial because they are monitoring and they are following how the association agreement is implemented. They should be very prompt when something is going wrong. When, for example, the Prosecco case was something like, what is going on? Why the courts are taking such decisions? DAG should have been ideally the one taking stand in favor of these provisions. So we don't have yet these mechanisms, and as I know, there is an initiative from the EU partners to help the creation of a secretariat for this DAG with the support of Ministry of Economy and Infrastructure, and I hope that it will happen, though I didn't hear anything about the latest evolutions. And just to add something more about the impact, overall impact that civil society could have, and here I will speak about my personal experience that I had within the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum. I belong to the work group third work group on energy security environment, and my colleague Otilia Nuțu from Romania, so she is also a part of the steering committee, so she is very active, and amid the discussions within the European Parliament in July this year on a resolution about the situation in Moldova regarding the invalidation of elections and what the European Union should do, which should be the next steps, I had a very, let's say, ad hoc idea together with Otilia to write a policy brief which will be published through the platform of Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, and which will include recommendations for the European Parliament and for the European institutions about what measures should be undertaken. And we had a very interesting exercise of advocacy. I should say that I'm feeling proud because we managed to include our recommendations into the European Parliament resolution. They are almost copy-paste, I should say, and it is about the, well, of course, with the explanatory part, it is about the suspension of the macrofinancial assistance, and it was a reference to the precedent of 2015 one, when the entire support for Moldova was frozen because of the banking sector crisis that you know already about. And so it was few recommendations that we included in our policy brief, and which was published under the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, were included, and they are now, they will live forever in this EAP resolution. And I think that we have more capacity. That is why I was so optimistic when I was speaking that we have more resources than we believe we have right now. So it's only about creatively using them, and obviously we should avoid any unnecessary overlapping, and to create those mechanisms which will help for those platforms which were created as monitoring elements of association agreement with participation of civil society, as functional, as visible, and as something which is respected by the government, not only when they need for reporting, but in real daily life, when civil society is respected for its knowledge, for its expertise, and for its contribution for the public interest, not for the political interest of specific political parties in Moldova or Ukraine and Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you, Denis. So you already answered my second round question about tangible results. We already have some good practices to discuss. But now I have to turn to our last speaker who, well, we've all spoken about the bilateral platforms, which are bilateral, so meaning that there is European Union civil society in it. And the European Union, in the sense of the platforms, is European Economic and Social Committee. I should say that somehow when the platforms were just being formed, the expectation was much higher, that there would be access to European civil society in general. And we've also heard some criticism the day before voiced by Chris Babinski that there is some observation or suspect that European Economic and Social Committee is not that motivated to be actively involved. That, well, it's obvious that the Ukrainian, Georgian and Moldovan side are much more interested in the work of these entities because it's our life, it's our policy, it's our future. But anyway, I know that among the European Economic and Social Committee members who are forming the European side of all those three platforms are really people who follow developments in the region, who care, who come not only for formal reasons, but want these countries to change. And I want you to show your side, your perspective. How do you see the action of this? I'm not sure that you're aware of the action of all platforms from the EU side, but at least of the EU Moldova platform. How this picture looks from your side. So what's the interest of European Economic Social Committee?
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to. It's working?
Is it? You can take mine.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me to have an insight on how it's working this platform. Of course, coming in Ukraine, I thought that you will have a different perspective. It's hard to project what is the vision at the European level, and I cannot say that I'm representing a position of European Economic and Social Committee. But as a person which I co-chair the civil society platform with Moldova, and I am a member of the civil society platform and domestic advisory group with Republic of Korea, I can say that from European side, enthusiasm of platforms, it's not in the way that you might think. We have an institutional approach related to agreements which has been signed. We are a body which is composed by hundreds of organizations from all over Europe. Many of them have representative status in Europe according to their laws. So we cannot say that the European Economic and Social Committee do not want to work this. But the way we harmonize the positions afterwards, it's a particular way which has been improved, if we can say it, in more than 57 years, or it's already 60 years from the Treaty of Rome. So we developed institutions to work for our goals in Europe. At least I cannot say because I'm coming from Romania, so I know a little bit what's mean here in Ukraine and Moldova and Georgia, but has been developed institution for working for this purpose and not necessarily people which are acting with a lot of enthusiasm, but after the funds will not be available, everybody will leave the tasks and nothing really will happen. So the difference from what Mr. Cernusha said and what the perspective in Europe it is, speaking with our German colleagues, by the way, which are not member of the platform with Moldova, or French colleagues, all the members of with the platform with Moldova are Romanians. So it's saying something about the interest, you know, the level interest towards. So it's a specialization inside the European Union, and each party, each country is trying to pick up those part of the world where they have interest. So it's not only in terms of principles, but for the other side, our purpose at the European Economic and Social Committee and the role which has been given to us by the Commission in a way, and the European institution, was to keep to maintain the institutional memory, which sometimes it's missing in report with other platforms. For example, in Latin America, they don't know what's happening from one year to another. But if they want to know what's happened, they come to us, and we have all the data regarding the meetings, the declaration, the secretariat, and so on. So we are trying to do this. We are not trying to be the visible ones, you know, but we are trying to be in all the meetings which are taking place in the Parliamentary Association Committee. So from my perspective, the relation with Moldova was very professional, and the progress can be seen step by step, and take into consideration the 3 years actually where we are operating. Another things which is underlined all the time out in Europe is saying These people from the East, they want everything to happen overnight. Will not happen overnight. We have a huge problem from system perspective, from mentality perspective. The things will need time. So we've been in the same situation, and we still are. We still are not understanding the value of social dialogue, for example, in a country like Romania, which has already 10 years experience, and our government is at the same level with the government of Moldova in certain aspects. So we don't have big expectation in such a short period of time. And from our perspective, bureaucratic one, we can say that what's happened with Moldova was by the book. Everything, all the years have been, as has been statutorily foreseen in the agreements by the law. It's a law. The association agreement is a treaty. It's the first treaty which a country has signed, and everybody has to listen about it, not only the Moldovan, the Germans, also the French and the Romanians. So it doesn't matter. So according to that law, that is the most important. We have to underline all the time this, because putting the platform which are around, this is okay. They are operational, they are task force, they can do changes, they can make social engineering, but it's not the law. The law is that. And if you like the law, you have to see what are the possibilities to improve these actions which can be developed under that treaty. So this is our like a vision what should happen in the future. In the future, the financial resources should be focused in order to enforce what has been said in that law. And we speak here about the Article 442 for the civil society platform with Moldova, and Article 376, paragraph 4 in the domestic advisory group in the chapter 13. That are the organization which should be improved if you want to follow the roadmap towards European integration. This is my perspective. If I will be in Romania and I'll be in the same situation we've been, and we know that the other platform contributed and civil society organization brought a huge upward to this, but finally, if we don't complete the procedure, will be a lot of problems and discussion in the parliament. So following this line, our cooperation with the Parliamentary Association Committee was key. And this happened all the time. We've been all the time invited by Andy Cristea, and not only the European side, but also the Moldovan side. We saw a lack of enthusiasm in Moldova, but it's due to their behavior, it's due to their institution, it's due to their political culture. Of course, it's a different approach. They didn't grant the money which has been foreseen, obliged by that law, by that treaty, to grant in order to ensure resources. And now, of course, the results are not at the level. But step by step, pressure by pressure, which has been put it on the government, now we understood they will have a program which will be dedicated to civil society organization, and that will be the first one to have institutions which are working for this purpose. And we hope, let's see what will happen, because everybody's speaking about election. I don't see what is the link. You know, if we speak about civil society organization, our task is to defend, you know, our principle, and wherever will be there, even Putin if will be, we have to defend from the civil society perspective aspects. And when will not be possible, we will draw and nobody will act. What is the problem? But now let's see what will be election. There's no link between election and civil society organization. The civil society organizations should follow their purpose to work in an organized manner and to succeed if they want. If not, always will be a reason to not act. So now we are waiting. We had the third meeting of the civil society platform in Brussels. Now will be a new meeting, I hope, in Chisinau this autumn, I suppose on 23rd, but nobody knows because we didn't receive an answer from the Moldovan authorities. We will hope that they will have to change the composition of the platform. From our side in the platform are Euro Chambers, Business Europe, ETUC, Copa Cochega, Cooperatives Europe, and the Eastern Partnership Society Forum, which are operating. And the other three members of the European Economic and Social Committee, which are representing NGO, employers' organizations, and trade unions. So from our side, the things are very clear. From the other side, I don't know what you want. I want to invite you. You've been invited in this. You said that it's good to take this path. Whatever this path, okay. I think everybody will be interested, and from our side will always be in response. But for the other side, if it will not be interest, it's to save the appearance doesn't worth it, you know. It's important to put something there. And we started from a discussion on a rule of law, good governance, and we arrived to the last meeting to have a discussion, for example, on transboundary water management. It's talking about the relationship between Moldova and Ukraine because it was the hydropower complex. Somebody had a problem with the hydropower complex, and we debated about this thing. So we started to enter a little bit in the economic inside of the association agreement and not to discuss only about rule of law and good governance, because we will stop the entire negotiation if we continue in that, because the situation didn't improve. It's clear, and didn't improve in Moldova and didn't improve in other EU member states. So the idea is to keep the contact, to maintain the contact, and to develop new themes which are concrete and reliable. So in this point, I will not want to insist, it's already Friday, but there are a lot of things to say from technical point of view, the declarations which are happening there. The meetings, how are organized, and the discussion about the quota for grapes, for example, which was been in the members of the Parliament of Moldova and member of the platforms, all this has been discussed and are parts of the advocacy and lobby efforts, which is hard to say this in the Moldavian press, to whom to publish this, what's happening in this platform. It's not like that. It's important to have a soft power which is working, and the solution maybe, which will be very visible in the next period, is to work throughout projects. Is the method, the classical method, with the other platform which has been said, has used it, having donors from all over the world. Now it's the moment, the European Union and the Moldovan government, to have this access to resources. And this will be possible if it will not be the blocking effects of the situation in Moldova. 2 times has been suspended the financial support because of internal causes. But I cannot convince the Germans they can give the money to Moldova if the situation is so strange sometimes. To disappear $1 billion, it's not an easy issue, and you cannot convince the people to grant very easy the money. So that is from our perspective the situation.
Thank you very much. That was a good question of what do we want the civil society in the 3 countries. I guess we want more efficiency in our work, yes, and that is my short question. Maybe you can, as Denis has already done for Moldova, just show some cases when, for example, some proposals stated in the joint declarations or other documents produced by the platforms had some effect. Or maybe you can show some cases when your proposals or draft legislation or 2 draft legislation was indeed made some change in the European integration path. Any specific examples?
Well, I think as regards to draft legislations, this is more concerns to the platform. So because yes, I'm national platform, because EU-Georgia platform doesn't produce any draft legislation.
Yeah, but you
so
produce joint declarations.
Yeah, but as regards to
how can you
to our declarations, sometimes difficult to say whether things were moved because of our declaration or we reacted on certain things that would it relate to, for example, labor inspectorate or something like this. Things are improved, but we don't know whether this was a result of our, but we indicated to the government this kind of things happened. And not only government, but European. For example, we appealed not to suspend the visa-free adoption of the visa-free. It was adopted, but was it influenced by our declaration or not, as regards to decision of the Council or European Council? We can't say, but. We contribute, of course. We contribute, we indicate, we reveal some problems, and then not only we act, then the media, civil society, other organizations, themselves, the government officials themselves also. We cannot say that we indicated on something and it was changed because we advocated until the end, etc. For the moment, I cannot recall exactly this case, but I feel that this declaration is taken into account, and we always receive response and promise to consider, and some things then change. So maybe there is already will somewhere to change things, but we push a little bit. This I can explain in such a way, not showing too much ambition and saying that we change something. Yeah.
Okay, some small changes are also important.
I think should be divided some example in Ukraine. For example, we have some area where is association agreement is declared very clearly, regulation. For example, energy sector. If you know, Elena Polenko is some activity, and our platform doing in the empty space. We have some environment, we have other organizations, we have other activities. This organization is related with the activity of the platform. If you have example in the energy sector, then the activity our organization from the other source and the other partner, and that is have some result. You remember the last law about the transparency energy sector, very good example. Other example, our area, in science and technology innovation. In association agreement, we have very general description. You can cooperate, use some possibility, very, very general. And we have good example in 2016 year. We have peer review on a document from your site, from your expert, our science technology area. But 2 years, our minister and science national academic don't do anything. Don't do some change exam report about change. This is a passive manner to do. We have some analytical report. We have joint declaration. For next meeting, we put all the sums bullets in this declaration. Every joint declaration, we put some words about progress in this area. And now we have good open letter, our science committee, to our government how to support for the cloud science and engineering resource. We have some proposal in the government decision in the plan activity in the information society area. Some words in our report. There is example for our proposal to put in the different decisions of our government. And now we have the main part of the dialogue with the EU side in the digital sector. I think this depends on the area, depends on organization, it depends on our capacity.
Thank you. Yes, you want to reply, but you have to reply, but there are, we have gender balance.
We have example dialogue about preparation Ukraine to new program, framework program for EU, Horizon report. We start to discuss.
Thank you, Ivan. And I already see hands. It's time to move to our audience. Please, Anna, you were first, and then Tamar.
Thank you very much. Actually, I discussed already this question partially with Kaha yesterday. And I see today the same rhetoric that we have overlapping with two platforms, and we have a lack of resources and competing or something. So my question is to representatives of both Moldovan and Georgian platforms or advisory bodies. What is preventing you from creating such support project as we do have here, synergy, which helps to coordinate efforts of all actors of civil society, which provides permanent support for analytics, which is very important for successful advocacy, which can give perspective and planning for several years ahead. What is the problem? Why don't you do this? Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for giving credit to our projects. It's nice to hear that. Tamar, you were also willing. It's not a question. Okay, so maybe, was it rhetorical? I'm not sure. Do you want to reply?
If I may, just because we have no Renaissance Foundation in Tbilisi. This is first. which received from European Union 2 million, so something.
You have outside Georgia, I should say.
Okay, yes, but unfortunately it's not as powerful for one thing, and the priorities are different with the Georgian Soros Foundation. Okay, Open Society Georgia. They do not finance national platform, and they do not finance. For example, I wanted to say this, that it's like complaining, and I don't like complaining, but saying frankly, we have 2 meetings within this EU-Georgia civil society platform. One meeting is in Tbilisi in Georgia, and another meeting is every 6 months, right? Another meeting will be in Brussels. When we take people to Brussels, in Georgia it's okay, because my organization usually, so I'm not chairman of GFSIS, but I say my organization where I work takes charges of usually charges, with some small support also from the national platform, which has small project also with very small budget from the European Union. We take both these charges and we organize this meeting inside, and we don't need to pay for travel of European side, of course. But when we take, last time we took 10 out of 18 people, 10 representatives, Georgian representatives to Brussels. It was really difficult for us to make it because I was begging, going to different donors and asking, requesting to support 2, 3, 4 participants. And finally, we gathered money, but it's really difficult. We have no this kind of financing, and that's unfortunately, yeah. And you are lucky that European Union decided to give this amount of money to Renaissance Foundation, and lucky also that Renaissance Foundation was...
I cannot tell...
Sorry? Sorry, Alasha works so much, and you know that he is, if he decides that he goes through walls. He will go through walls, but sometimes you go through wall and there is nothing. In your case, you went through the wall and there was something.
Okay. Now, actually, our project is also not endless. So at some point, we would have the same question as well, how do we continue? And that might be one of the questions for joint advocacy, because the same probably issue arises in Moldova. I don't know, at what expense are you going to Brussels when there are Brussels-based meetings?
I can speak from the, let's say, from the information I have got, because I know that, for example, we had situations when meetings were organized via Skype, which is a nice way. It is a cheap way, so you can talk to those who are in Brussels without going physically to Brussels. But again, I would like to say that there is a huge difference between the national platform which exists under Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, because they have that centralized secretariat, which is somehow taking the responsibility of of doing logistical stuff, of organizing these meetings, and they receive support from the DG NIR, from the Commission. So it's always about that entity which is dealing with systematical work, plus the financial part. I believe, I will underline this one more time, I believe that everything which is related to association agreement, specifically civil society platform and DAG, should have a support. It can be minimal, just to keep a person who will deal with secretariat. It doesn't mean to have a lot of money and a huge budget, but the person who will systematize the information, will keep everything, and will organize, will help with logistical stuff. And this can be done through the EU delegation. And right now it is a huge discussion about using the financial potential that the EU delegations has in all 6 EAP countries for these specific reasons. Maybe not this specific project, but other types of communication and interoperability between those platforms. What I would suggest additionally is, maybe if you are so advanced, maybe you could, because I see that maybe you could somehow I don't know, organize something in order to show, to share the experience that you have at the level of gathering or fundraising, functioning, and so on for the Georgian and Moldovan platforms, which right now are fragmented. So I see this as a good opportunity for another idea of changing the situation and sharing experience.
That's one of the rationale behind this event. Just at least start to know what's going on in the countries, and then we could come up with maybe some joint statements and joint proposals, because to me it sounds abnormal that a body that is created by the bilateral agreements has no funding, and begging about funds to travel to Brussels is not really, does not help to be active as a society in promoting European integration. So indeed, I guess we could initiate some joint statement, and hopefully European Economic and Social Committee would support us in that endeavor. Okay, I'm afraid we lost Tamar. Yes, but then Chris was this. Yes. Please bring, okay.
There were Darius also wants to say.
Okay. Okay, obviously this problem of money is enormous. The whole problem of monitoring, for civil society, monitoring the whole association process is an enormous problem, because the civil society has about, what, 12 people or 18 people, and then there's a whole government administration which is actually doing these things and producing. And from what Lasha tells me in Georgia, he's sitting there in the parliament building going through all the legislation and trying to make sure that it's okay, and this is exhausting. I mean, all of you sit there probably not being paid anything, right? And you're doing this, but you know, so you volunteered for this, so you have to do it. As for the money for travel, of course, some money has to be found, and I think we have to. There will be money from the DG NEAR for the national platforms, and maybe we should reserve some of that money for this whole DCFTA process. But also, I'm very happy that the Moldovan EU talked about that Dniester problem. The Ukrainian and the Moldovan national platforms have just issued a statement on this river problem, which is a very, very big problem, and I'm glad that finally that you're talking about something that's actually real and a real problem. Just to go back to the beginning, in the beginning there was this very difficult birth process for all the three platforms, because the ECOSOC is very, very conservative, and it has this 9 thing, 333, and everyone had to adapt to that, and there was a big problem there. And at that time, we had this idea in the Civil Society Forum Steering Committee Secretariat that we would try and monitor what was happening in the three platforms, just to make sure that you all knew what was happening between you, and that you didn't get screwed by ECOSOC. Basically, that's the short version. So that was why we turn up. That's why we turn up. We try and turn up at these meetings. And again, that we have funds for 1 ticket to go to these meetings. And I think that isn't working very well, but it should work better, because we keep you informed. But the other thing is that you should maybe at this meeting, which is going to happen every year, because you have this pile of money from the Commission. At this meeting, the 3 country managers or whatever should meet together and talk about their problems and about their problems with ECOSOC, and actually really plan to try and resolve these problems and create a lobby for the civil society part of the DCFTA process. Because what everyone has to remember is that from the civil society part in the 3 countries, we are all fragmented, right? Everyone does their own thing, and they're quite jealous of what they're doing, and they don't really talk to each other. On the ECOSOC side, it's one institution which is managing this process. They are together because they sit in the same offices, and there's one woman who organizes all these meetings, etc. They are completely united, and we are completely disunited. So, as a solution to this problem, I suggested on the Civil Society Forum website, we have a page devoted to the DCFTA process. Thank you. But also at these meetings, you should talk about every year you meet and you say, this is what, this is wrong, this is right, this is what we should be pushing for. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. I just can add, can say to your proposals that we are meeting already the representatives of the three platforms.
Here.
Yes, we are here. So I know. There is room to discuss our joint interests and possible.
But you're not really talking about how to deal with ECOSOC.
I don't think that ECOSOC is our biggest challenge. I think so.
I didn't understand what is the link with the ECOSOC, because if we read the papers, documents, what is your problem with the ECOSOC? I didn't understand. Because look, we have from the European side, we have our own. We are the European side of the platform, and you are the Ukrainian side, Moldovan side, Georgian side. From the European side, we have our own way to make the things. And I told you, it's half institutional and half it's the rest, you know. It's the organization which are organized at the European level, which they want to play this, they are entering in the game, and they are playing. But the ECOSOC, it's an institution, it's an organization, it's a body of the European Union, according to the treaty. It's also a concentration of the civil society organization. The difference is it's arriving to compromise. So we arrived to a compromise. Our way of making things, it's a little bit different from what the Commission wanted to have from these platforms or domestic advisory group. But we are not against. We sent letter to the Commission, to Madame Malmström, regarding to domestic advisory group. We sent letter to Mr. Andy Christia, for example, in case of Moldova, and we discussed with the people from the Moldovan parliament that they have to push forward a little bit for granting these resources. And we have received promises after 3 years of the implementation in practice, you know, because starting in 2014, but what you have, it's only 3 years of concrete activity. After 3 years, they have an agreement that we have to grant this money for the Moldovan side of the platform in order to ensure their participation, which was not the obligation of the European Union, but the European Union has the programs. Before, in the case of Romania, Bulgaria, was the TAIEX programs, which can be used in this regard in order to consolidate the financial resources of the Moldovan side. But what has to be understood is that the Moldovan side or Ukrainian side, Georgian side, also should take very seriously this obligation into consideration, as our money for other sectors of activity should be money also for this, and the government should grant this money. And this is an obligation as a member state. When you will be member state, you will have the same obligation to comply with this. So nobody is spared. This approach that everything will come from somewhere, it's not, from my point of view, it's not realistic. Others can tell you that, yes, we can do it. It's not realistic. The government of Ukraine can support throughout programs. With the support of European Union, they can put the co-financing side, and the European Union to put the rest, can support this kind of activity if they want. If they do not want, you have a very good reason to say, look, they are not complying with your principle and objectives, so why they are in association agreement if they are not respecting the civil society organization? So this is our experience which we have. So.
Thank you. Chris, we are not here discussing the confrontation between the Eastern Partnership. Yes, it's a discussion, but I don't think that, kindly thank you for offering your help with fighting with European and Economic and Social Committee. I don't think it is the intention of bilateral platforms to do that. Yes, there was 2 hands being held for a very long time, so I kindly ask to pass microphone to Dariusz.
Okay, Dariusz kindly suggested that I would comment first and then he would continue. Well, I mean, those 2 different type of platforms which we have in EU, Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia relationship with the European Union is basically the product of Brussels. Because, I mean, they put this framework, actually even the 3rd framework with these DACs as well. I mean, the European Commission created the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, according to their vision how the civil society should be organized, structured, and involved into the discussion with the European Commission. somehow it differed from ECOSOC model, which existed for a long time before that. But the European Commission decided somehow for another framework and presented it for the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, and it works as according to these lines. ECOSOC, of course, has a different model, and having secured the place from the European Union side in the bilateral platforms, tried to push Ukrainian, Moldovan, and Georgian civil society to adopt this model. And actually, we see even from the composition of these platforms which we have now that I mean, situation is a little bit different, though the platform is called the same, but even the structure, even the composition of those platforms are a little bit different, and sometimes very different, which has to do with this fact in mind, but also with some local specialities. As I understand, if we talk about social partners and their kind of strength and numbers and everything, in Georgia it's a very different case, like, let's say, if we talk about Ukrainian case. But my question would be rather twofold, or even threefold. First is whether we, coming back to the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, whether we as three countries, talking about three countries now, whether we in the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, we are seeing a kind of framework or format for our enhanced cooperation within this framework, and whether Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum in general, or Secretariat of the Forum, or the Steering Committee in general, is kind of thinking about this kind of stuff. This is number one. Number two question is whether we, I mean, the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum is working more or less on permanent basis. It has some procedures, it has some ways of producing some statements. So, I mean, even between the meetings, those assemblies, which, I mean, so far annual assemblies, we have some results, some discussions, some statements, opinions, etc. With the bilateral platforms, frankly speaking, apart from meeting twice a year, I haven't seen much permanent work from the European side. I mean, we are in Ukraine, we know how we kind of engaged with trying to have this permanent work from the Ukrainian side, but from the European side, for instance, when we had these discussions, presentations of the draft report of in the European Parliament on the association agreement implementation, we got the request from the Eastern Partnership Secretariat that there is a possibility to urgently submit some amendments. From the ECOSOC Secretariat, we haven't received this. And that poses the question. Actually, ECOSOC is a very, really kind of big status institution within the EU system. But somehow, I mean, if we only engaged in producing some statements biannually, I mean, I don't think that it's the most efficient way. I mean, I think in order to influence the other institutions like Commission or Parliament, you need to engage all the time, kind of permanently and more quickly. And very last question is maybe existential question. I mean, I understand that money is existential, but being from the donor organization myself, I'll always put another question. I mean, okay, platforms, it's fine. I mean, it's nice. I mean, gatherings and everything. But I mean, is it really impossible what you are talking about? I mean, what concrete steps you are doing, kind of lobbying the government, producing some added value legislation and so on, without platforms? I mean, you are doing this on your own. You are doing this together with your like-minded people, like-minded NGOs, maybe even some coalitions or maybe some working groups. Do we necessarily need a platform for that? Is it really an added value? Or sometimes maybe an obstacle in order to push something when you need to go to a very kind of different people which gathered together in the platform and to agree through very lengthy discussions on something which you don't necessarily find a consensus. I understand that there are kind of pros and cons, frankly speaking. So that's why I kind of rather would like maybe to put a provocative question to whoever is ready to answer. I mean, I see that there are also some cons to the platform's idea, not only pros, so to say. Thanks.
Yes, let's pick the question of Dariusz and then answer.
I don't have a question. Actually, I have a proposition. I came here for an advocacy point, yep, I am returning to my old idea, and the issue I am advocating already for 2 years. That's in the report of the Chatham House, which we were presenting yesterday. It's about evidence also to help you to monitor progress in implementing association reports. I'm talking about this open access public depository of products produced by European Union assistance. I don't know how you are able to assess progress of your own respective governments, which sources you have. I understand that you as NGOs, you specialize in some policy areas, in some more perhaps than in the others. But this is a serious source, also for academic research, because most of the academic research is really shallow of empirical evidence. And again, as I yesterday said, researching Ukraine, despite having been here on on permanent basis almost for 3 years and on the returning for almost 15 years, still an ethnographic expedition for me. That has to change. That has to change. So what I am suggesting that you, I know in your national or multilateral, bilateral platforms of European Union, would seriously raise this question, where are the products? So that there is a system where European Union assistance programs actually deposit their outputs. Assessments, again, bilaterally, some countries are already asking for screening, peer reviews about how the institutions and systems are working. This is, I suspect, is being at least partially done by the projects. And as I would repeat what I said yesterday, in 10 years I see only deterioration, not even an improvement. Previously, at least, there was a requirement, written or unwritten, that everything produced by assistance projects are put on the project website. Now I did a full scan of, at least for Ukraine. I saw, as I mentioned, only EU for Business, which is doing it on their own, and some other projects. Otherwise, it's just Twitter communication messages about events, training materials as well. So that would help you to better monitor and hold your governments accountable. Academics would receive additional empirical evidence. And thirdly, the European taxpayers would be spared of duplicating materials. Well, that I am seeing, that some things are being repeated over and over again. European Commission, as you heard yesterday, is not interested in this. I'm sorry to say, on the record.
Thank you, Dariusz.
So unless you raise it, it will not be solved.
We do raise it. Maybe we have to raise it more strongly. Okay. So first, do you have a question or you want to reply?
I need to leave, so I want to
yes,
answer.
Please. Yes.
Well, I fully agree that we need such a, let's say, common web page where we can find everything, all information. I would say it shouldn't be limited to one country. I would prefer to have all 6 countries. And maybe with your report and Chatham House, it would be possible to advocate and lobby even through MPs. And unfortunately, they are now in the electoral fever, and I'm not sure that they are somehow interested in such kind of ideas. Well, I know that sometimes MPs, the voice of MPs can make some change. I'm not sure that the European Commission will really work on that. What I could suggest, and I did it a few times, I know that those from European External Action Service are very active. They have people, desk officers who are working on specific countries, and they deposit everything, all the information. They are even collecting from civil society reports. I would be somehow cautious about the capacity of the European Union to monitor and to collect everything, because linguistic barriers and many other aspects, so they rather come to us and ask for details from civil society. So anyway, we are doing the desk research, and then...
Sorry, I will explain. It's about what the projects are being produced.
Okay.
This is being uploaded in the internal management system.
I criticize them for the same reason, and unfortunately, I think that
it's not about producing more; it's about making
systematical.
Producing less in terms of avoiding duplication, and making it transparent. So when the reports will be transparent, first it would help you to assess how changes to the laws or about also the progress that the projects are informing European Commission and the beneficiaries. And and secondly, that would avoid duplication of, repetition of the same outputs. No, now the systems are making it public for free would help actually would spare of repeating the same outputs for three countries individually about the same background, especially when I'm talking about best practices. Every time it's counted as a new working day because all these best practices are already collected.
Thank you, Darius. I guess we've taken your notice. May I suggest just briefly?
Yes, and then two questions which were raised previously. I think that the first question is very sensitive. I was last week in Brussels. We were talking within the working groups with other colleagues from Azerbaijan, Armenia, and other countries which are not that advanced in EU in the relationship with the European Union. And when they're hearing something about three countries talking something isolated from them, then they are feeling that they are excluded. So we should be very careful with this kind of approach because they are really feeling that they are not engaged. And I think that maybe we should use another platform for doing this, like trilateral discussions, but not within the Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, because I saw it recently. It's not a good idea. And then to the third question, it was about the sensitive, something very sensitive, but what exactly? Could you? Yeah, your third question.
Dimitri's question was, why do platforms exist? Do they have to exist?
I think in case of Moldova, it's a very sensitive one. I think that in case of Moldova, this helps to draw attention to what is going on in Moldova, because sometimes using the external platforms is more efficient than talking to officials at home, just because they ignore, and they are doing that consistently and consequently one time after another. So Eastern Partnership Civil Society Forum, it was a good platform to raise the issue of Dniester. It was a good platform to speak about the political situation in Moldova. I believe that this is one more tool in favor of us, civil society representatives. Thank you.
Dennis, may I suggest, while I was still here, we can test whether joint declarations have any effect. We may enclose a suggestion by Darius, this line that we stress the importance of having some sort of depository for technical assistance outputs, and then see whatever the whole output of the assistance, and then we see whether European Union reacts to this type of civil society proposals and this format.
I'm sorry, I was involved in a very interesting exercise of collecting information about all projects related to energy which were financed by European Union. It was a mess because there is no common source where you can find this information. So it was really difficult. And
so that's the reason, yes.
In the internal management systems of European delegations.
No, they don't have it because it was, because no, it's not, because it was a task committed by them to others. So they don't have this information. It was for the internal use because they have such a ramified system that they don't know about each other. Sorry, but they don't have a clear understanding. Even they don't have it.
They have it, but they hide it from me.
Okay, so that means something should be done. So let's work on that together. Ivan, very shortly, because you also want to leave.
I have only 5 sentences. First, about relation with scientific research. Of course, we need to do, but I know a lot of scientific research is very general. It's not similar as your presentation, very short, very clear, and understand statistics. Of course, our ways, we try to involve some scientific workers, for example, assisted learning, lifelong learning, some people from scientific institutes come in our group. And we try combine this approach. Next, of course, we have a lot of the project under the EU, different EU project, EU for business, EU for innovation. If we have meeting in the Brussels, in the COSOC, of course, we have some prepare report from our side, other side from ECOSOC. But we sometimes don't know some analytical work in the different European project under the Europa Aid or the technical aid program. It's duplicate not only our side, also from EU side. Of course, we should think about this. And for your question, of course, we can send us a request to our ministry as organization, but if we have some input or the answer request from as platform, is some way we can put other ministry to discussion under our communication office of incarnation, and we have ways to impact, to influence through European size. Sometimes our proposal come into the ministry during the European organization, and from European organization come into our ministries. Is another impact.
Okay, thank you. And may finally come back to Dumitru Fornea. The question was, can European and Economic Social Committee be more active and provide some value added also on its behalf, considering its immense resources?
Yes. No, from the question, I realize that maybe it's also a problem of communication and to understand the entire mechanism. The mechanism is not proposed by the European Economic and Social Committee and doesn't have any interest to have it. The mechanism is proposed by the association agreement, which has been signed by two parties. One, it's the government of Ukraine, Moldova and Georgia, and for the other side is the European Union. We have to understand this for the beginning. And the European Economic and Social Committee has received a task from the European Commission based on an agreement, and from the European External Action Service, based on an agreement that has to deal with this, has been passed to us, this task. But the European Economic and Social Committee doesn't exist because of your platform or other platform. The European Economic and Social Committee exists because it has been founded with the Treaty of Rome in 1957. It's a total different approach. And I saw the same discussion in Romania, country which had no experience with the social dialogue, trying to give lessons in Brussels. And this is shame because I know the reaction of the Romanian government, and to try to explain to the others what is working. The committee has been worked on the models which has been provided by the Nordics, by the Germans, by the French. This type of working, concentration, what they say, concertation sociale, the model of the French Economic and Social Committee, can be bureaucratic, can be debatable, can be wherever. But it's a way which the institutional, social and civic dialogue has been done during the time. So that is very important to be clarified. It's not related to the committee. If the platform was disappear, no problem, nothing will happen with the committee. Believe me, not this is the problem. I told you the problem are the articles and the agreement between the ESCC and the Commission. This has to be understood from the beginning. We had before follow-up committees with Ukraine, with the Latin American countries, with the Africa, with ACP countries. We had this type of, we didn't need it necessary to act in domestic advisory group to add new groups. And this is, you'll find in our internal documents towards the Commission, where we even criticize the fact that now we have to spread our efforts towards more fields when we had a model which has been working before and was more concentrated and was much easier. The problem is the member states which are signing this association agreement, they didn't comply with their, financial obligation towards the civil society organization, and for the other side, the European Commission didn't release the necessary money for having this. But this cannot be a compulsory task, should be a cooperation result. And this cooperation between the parties has started. We don't know if it will be successful or not, but believe me, the discussion is not only the platform, the discussion about the entire political, institutional, construction of the European Union on all these treaties which are signed. Are many voices which in Europe are saying, we need this kind of, civil society aggregation in institution, wherever. We want to have this in the future. We want to have these free trade agreements. We want to have this type of financed contact. For this, why doesn't happen naturally? Why we need to build all this? This discussion is also in Europe, and it's putting in, but please don't take into target the only European Economic and Social Committee, because it's not the only target. And are many arguments to demonstrate you that is not. And afterwards, about the effectiveness, you have to look on the documents of the European Commission, and you'll see, and the European Parliament, many reference, wherever a legislation, a piece of legislation, it's published, it's saying, take into account the opinion of the Economic and Social Committee. It's among the first one. Take into account the opinion of the Committee of Region. The account, I don't know, depends on the theme. You will see that this, in a way or another, counts, but it's not the way that others are singing from outside of the process. And you are not others, because the platform already has been involved in activities. As you see, it's in this. But I give you the example from my country. Always we have this discussion, why is it not happening rapidly? No, in the Romanian Economic and Social Committee, an opinion, a request for opinion is coming with 3 hours before the meeting, and in European Economic and Social Committee, it's coming with 6 months before the meeting. It's a process which is very, how to say, it's delayed, but afterwards allows everybody to be consulted and involved in the consultation process. Depends, it's up to you now to judge what is good. Maybe it will be a decision tomorrow to disappear with the French Economic and Social Committee, European and so on. Was this request in the European Parliament? Was a populist Italian member of the parliament. We requested this. So will be no wonder if this will happen one day. But what you have to understand is the committee wants to be a partner.
Shall I interrupt you? Excuse me for interrupting. There are 2 members that are almost escaping this panel. So your last words are actually now, no chance, very briefly.
I believe that...
your flight is gone.
It's about other project that I should discuss, and they are waiting for me. So I believe that we have enough brilliant minds to figure out how to get out from the mess we have in some specific areas of the activity of platforms. And I really want to see more solutions and less complaints. Thank you.
Sure.
A short remark on the rhetoric question of Dmitry. As for me, as you said, if you had born us, so the suicide is not the best solution for our platforms.
Okay, I see that people are escaping podium, and I feel a strong smell of coffee, so I guess we are coming to the wrap up. But really, the last round for those who remain, maybe what do you see could be a subject for our continued trilateral talk of the 3 platforms?
Well, yes. Somebody said, I think, Claudius, that also FDI and not just European investments in Georgia and Moldova, but also mutual 3 countries, cooperation between businesses of these 3 countries. So prospects of economic cooperation, not just economic integration in terms of creation of common free trade area, etc. This is interesting. But just physical cooperation between businesses would be also interesting. And in general, coordination of EU policies between 3 countries, it's interesting. So that's brainstorming. So.
Yes, first of all, thank you. And it was very interesting to be here and to listen. Very important ideas, and I think just I'd like to say shortly something regarding questions which Dmitry asked, and we have platforms, Dmitry. I think the platform, for instance, Georgian platform, can accumulate ideas and produce some products and then advocate. We have success stories, and of course, if we imagine we don't have platforms, yeah, we are, and we can do something without platform. Platform is not paradise. It's like one coalition. But we have to be realistic. We have platform, and we able to work with the platform. And second, about just shortly about ECOSOC, and I have a question. Is ECOSOC proper partner in our work toward association agreement? This is question, because I don't say about just 2 meetings per year. I mean a lot of logical questions. For instance, we need a lot of reforms, but have ECOSOC experience or ideas regarding prosecutor, regarding judges, regarding many things. They're interested in just social dialogue. Yes, it's very important, I agree. But association agreement is not just social dialogue. It's larger, yeah. And if my friends say mathematics also means, and if 2 + 2 means social dialogue, it's not correct, you know. We don't see everywhere social dialogue. It's not little. It's a little bit crazy attitude. Yeah. And that's why we had problems when we started negotiations and talking with our partners. Yeah. But it's reality. We struggle, but and what else? Nothing. Yeah. And we are living with the kind of problems. Okay, sometimes happens much more worse. Yes, it's and finally, I think we have common interests, and maybe it would be better if we focused in our achievements and our products also, and because we're able to explain what we did and what kind of achievements we have in our countries. And I think next time we can talk more about focus more about our achievement. This is just my suggestion to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do you want to Lasha, you have all the micros, please share.
Yeah. I see the main theme of discussion. It's the relation with the ECOSOC. I don't know what to answer to this. The level of expectation is very high towards ECOSOC. ECOSOC is just one of the partners in the process of association. And we deal with the trade and sustainable development chapter. We deal with the platform. If we have experts, not this is the main issues. We have a lot of experts, not this is the problem from our point of view, if we can mobilize experts. The problem is the mechanism, the institutional mechanism which is built in order to make the platform working. And we have to understand that it's not a relation donor-recipient issue. It's not donor-recipient. You are still stuck in this. You are now partners of the European Union. And if your government, wherever it is, being in Ukraine, being in Moldova, being in Georgia, will not take serious, you have to look in your own government. Don't find guilty guys otherwise in the other side. Your status now is not the same that before the association. You have more obligation like before. And when you'll be member of the European Union, you'll have even more. So this reaction of showing somebody is guilty because we don't succeed to do it in our country, it's a little bit not productive. I don't see that you don't have to write. You can say whatever you want about the European institution, about the SEC, about everyone. We have to see what was behind the process. Do we really have a political will in Ukraine, in Georgia and Moldova to be a member of the European Union? This is the question. Don't put me the questions about ECOSOC and things like that. That it's institutions from European Union. They have their own policy. It's not, you can discuss about that, but you cannot do nothing against that. I just want to tell you. And what you can tell, to demonstrate that you are civil society organization, that you are trade union organization, that you are employer organization, that you are civil society organization in Ukraine, in Moldova, in Georgia, and you can mobilize. You can mobilize people, resources. You are representative, and you can make a change, a difference. And when you'll have a meeting with the European Commission or your government, you say, look, you are not taking it in serious, this relation, and I urge you to do this. This is what I think it's productive. Saying always that the other side is not doing what you are expecting, You are from, no, I don't want to be, this is a rhetoric question. Yeah.
Okay. Can we just maybe
I think we
stop
lost opportunities to have reliable partner. This is the question.
That's when
yeah,
they
we lost opportunities because association agreement is very important to modern Georgia, for instance. This is our concern.
And what we can do, the European
Georgian civil society under the association agreement have just one partner from European side.
Okay.
But if we follow the logic of law, and
just a moment,
yeah.
just a moment. What you can do, what the European Economic and Social Committee can do for you.
Yeah, we can continue next time.
Sorry? That's why they say that you have to have women on the panel to avoid such situation. I really don't want us to finish up on this note, because just Dmitry, it really feels like you are an object of all the criticism, but the reality is that it's not a criticism of ECOSOC as such. It's a criticism born out of the fact that there are very big expectations also on the EU side. And we really want EU civil society to step in. We need civil society help, analytical and all the other kind of help. And that's why there is some disappointment that realizing that the European Economic and Social Committee has its limitations, but because, as you said, it's not your priority to have these bilateral platforms, and you have lots of other activities to be done. And sometimes it's a bit formalist approach, which is okay for your institution, but probably not okay for our civil society, which has big aspirations and is very ambitious. And we hear sometimes from our European counterparts, I mean Ukrainian civil society platforms, that we are too pushy, we have too much on our agenda, and we sometimes demand too much from them. They have also their limitation of capacity. But then comes the question of being more flexible. So if the European Economic and Social Committee recognizes its limitations, then you have to provide, or we have jointly to provide some room within these frameworks for other European organizations to step in, because it cannot be that you are not able to contribute more, but you do not allow others to contribute more. So there should be some flexibility provided.
Tell me specifically, who doesn't allow to whom to do something more? Specifically, no, because I want to communicate this message. I felt that I am in the middle of something which doesn't allow others to provide. And this is very interesting, because I want to put this question to our Secretariat to say why the European Economic and Social Committee do not allow other civil society organizations to proliferate, to provide assistance and so on. I felt this even from the beginning. Tell me, explain in detail.
It's a formal structure, okay. But
the truth of the matter is there are no civil society organizations in member states which are interested in this. We will start with Business Europe. Because there are
okay, let's turn to the platforms.
Put it out in the paper, you wouldn't get many applications, because that's the way things are.
Well, that's a bigger story. How do we engage other organizations?
No,
this
is very important what you are saying. This is a failure of the association process, maybe. Because we don't talk about here about what organizations are. It's a problem, because if European organizations are not interested in what's happening with Ukraine or Moldova or Georgia, what does this mean? It's something very serious. They are not interested in more enlargement, maybe. And the European Commission, I can say it because I am a member of the European organization and from a civil society organization. They are not interested no more, no? This is so what is the mission from this organization? To build trust around the idea of new enlargement, to build trust about the idea that in one day Ukraine will be there. It's the same discussion we had it for Romania. Romania is too corrupt and Bulgaria to be in the European Union. But now it is in the European Union because everybody agreed that they have to be in the European Union. I don't know. I have a
feeling that we raised a lot of important issues and probably we have to continue. We will not solve all the problems. I am glad that you were here. I hope you didn't feel targeted. But we have to discuss this. There is truth in your words as well, because it's not easy to sustain interest on behalf of EU organizations in the region as well. So it's not the ECOSOC who has to blame. But we have to maybe look broad and not be only limited to formal structures and be focused on this formal arrangement. So there should be more focus on the substance of our work, how to make it more efficient, how to make it more effective. And I guess this should be a subject of many more discussions, trilateral discussions, quadrilateral discussions, engaging the partners from different, maybe we should also bring EU organizations to listen what they think of the situation and also speak about that, how to make these platforms not only formal structures written by, provided for by associations agreement, but really meet the needs of the process, because the implementation requires civil society engagement, and it's really a big challenge. I said in the beginning that to transform the country, we need to transform ourselves. Civil society needs to transform itself. And one maybe of the value added of ECOSOC's involvement into the platform construction. Maybe it was also one of the challenges, and it is still one of the challenges, is that civil society, the traditional for Ukraine civil society, was very separated from the processes within this social dialogue part. It is still hard for us to find consensus because we are not used to talk to each other. And we, as was said, we do not see social dialogue everywhere, while trade unions and employer organizations tend to see social dialogue in many issues. But it's still something we should slowly and gradually learn, because civil association agreement has so many chapters where traditional civil society organizations have very little capacity, and where there is room maybe for trade social partners where they are stronger. And it's important for us to widen this notion of civil society, because the tasks that it has to perform with regard to association agreement are much more diverse and challenging than we used to. It's no longer possible to just claim or try to advocate for some abstract European choice. We have to be very specific. We have to learn and know a lot. We have to constantly update our knowledge, and that requires a lot of work. But I know that many people in this room are willing to take this challenge and are doing their best to be the biggest promoters in this country and other countries of the association agreement and related European future. And there is indeed a lot we can learn from each other and a lot we can do together. So I hope, just to sum up, it's only the beginning. Despite all this, some negative replicas going over my head, I really enjoyed this panel because we started to talk. It's our first dialogue, trialogue between the three platforms, and this is really important that we continue it. So on this positive note, I'm inviting you to the last coffee break. Yeah. Thank you very much for your contribution.